Hello students, I welcome you again to this online learning platform. So we are still in history, unit 5, and then we are on lesson 2. Our lesson 12 today, we are looking at manifestation of neocolonialism and its indicators. Manifestation of neocolonialism and its indicators. So before we go to today's lesson, looking at manifestation of neocolonialism and its indicators, last time we had talked about neocolonialism. We saw it as being the process through which the former colonial powers still influence their colonies through different ways, social, political, and economic. And also we looked at the causes of neocolonialism. Some of the causes we looked at unequal exchange, we looked at Balkanization, we looked at foreign aid, we looked at we saw foreign aid, we looked at mediation of the ruling class or leaders, among others, etc. So, by the end of that lesson, many of you are able to understand the meaning of neocolonialism, whereby when we talk about neocolonialism, we look at post-colonial situation in Africa, or the period after the end of colonial rule, or the period after African countries, or the newly independent African countries, how they were, or period after independence. So today, we are putting our focus on manifestation of neocolonialism. When we look at the manifestation of neocolonialism, here we look at how neocolonialism is being manifested or implemented on the African continent by the colonial masters. Then after, we shall look at the indicators of neocolonialism. So when you look at some of the ways how neocolonialism is being manifested, point number 1, dependence on foreign aid, dependence on foreign aid, whereby African countries, even as per now, they cannot raise enough money to sustain their budgets, so they still depend on aid from the former colonial powers. So Africans receive foreign aid in different ways, in the form of donations, in the form of loans, in the form of different things, whereby these African countries, they have to pay back. They pay back in the form of raw materials like gold, minerals are being taken, and many other things, whereby for them, when they give out foreign aid, still they have to receive their money back. Then another point, we can talk about collaboration with the local elites. Collaboration with the local elites. So under this one, we look at that Western neocolonialists have collaborated with the local elites to perpetuate the exploitation of people of Africa. Most of the local collaborators are not committed to national interest and development of their continent, but they're just based on individual individual interest. Many of them, they're not Pan-Africans, For them, they benefit, they are being corrupted by the former colonial powers to sell out or to sell off their continent in the hands of the colonial powers. So this is another way how neocolonialism is being implemented or manifested. Unfair trade terms. Another point, unfair trade terms. When we read here on unfair trade terms, that African countries are producers of cash crops like coffee, tea, sisal, cotton, which serve as raw materials to developed countries. However, the prices of these raw materials are determined by the white men or the colonial powers. And still again, when finished goods are brought back to the African continent for Africans to buy, because Africans, they are the market for the white countries or the superpowers or the colonial powers. Still again, prices of those goods are being determined by the colonial powers. Colonial powers are the ones determining the prices of those goods. Then another point we can say, influence of foreign currencies. So when we read here that foreign currencies like dollars, pounds, euro, Japanese yen, Chinese yen, they are the ones that determine the value of the African currency, because for them, they seem to be strong or they have strength on the African currency. So the African currency, it only works better in a given respective African country. But you cannot get Iranian francs and you go and you try to boost out in America buying something from the supermarket. It is impossible. But you can be having a dollar here, domestic at home here, and then you go to a given supermarket and you buy something using that dollar or any currency from Europe based on some of these currencies I've mentioned here. So that is another way how neocolonialism is being manifested in Africa. Then technological dependency. We talk about technological dependency. So African countries still depend on technology from the European powers, like tractors, which are used in digging, cars, which are used everywhere, internet, and many other things that involve technology. And when these things end up, having mechanical problem, we still hire foreign countries to come and do maintenance on those things, meaning that they give you technology, they are the ones to maintain that technology. So whatever cash you give them, for you an African or for the African country remains with nothing. Then another point we can say, military presence and intervention. Colonial powers are being seen in Africa in different ways, intervening in African politics, training soldiers. They have been so much present in African countries as peacemakers. You can see them in Congo, you can see them in Central Africa, and the other African countries which face crisis. So that's also another way how neocolonialism is being manifested. Then use of foreign political ideologies and practices. So colonial powers still lead their ideologies being used in Africa. Either African countries are capitalists or they are communists. Whereby capitalists, that is capitalism. Under capitalism, we look at the situation whereby goods are owned individually or private ownership of goods and everything or property. Then in communism, this is public ownership or universal ownership. So all these ideologies of the white men are being used in Africa. You see how African governments are being operated. they are operated either based on capitalism or communism. Then another point we can see here, cultural degradation. Cultural degradation, I talk about cultural degradation. So here we look at the situation whereby African culture is dying out in favor of the Western culture. So there's what we call cultural erosion in Africa today. Africans are embracing Western culture in ways of dressing, language, and also forms of marriage. That's why there are many cases concerning with marriage, like divorces at a high rate, because all these things we copy them from the white men. Cases of single families, like nuclear families, a family which only has the father and the mother together with their children without welcoming relatives. Then single mothers, all these things are being seen in Africa today, but it is the order of the day in Western countries. Then another point we can say, brain drain. Many African youth who are intellectuals, brilliant, after education, many they seem to, to run away from the African continent to go and seek, employment opportunities abroad from the European countries or from the colonial powers. So not letting the chance for these African youth to educate their fellow Africans, but they seem to go and apply that kind of knowledge, they take it abroad. Then regional grouping, we talk about regional grouping, regional groupings. All the things are being brought by the white people or the colonial powers, things concerning like the East African Community, ECOWAS, SADC, all these things are being, you see them in Africa as regional blocks, ways of promoting economic integration or economic, development, but knowledge from the colonial powers. Then impact of media. Media today, when we look at media, how things are being done, technology in the media or the press, it is also being copied from the white people. Another point we can say, categorizing of African countries through economic levels. So the colonial powers, they try to categorize African countries or economies of African countries by showing that a given African country, it is a low developed country. They bring about middle income status, and then they bring about developed countries. So all these things are being caused by neocolonialism, or they try to show how neocolonialism is being manifested in Africa. When you go to another point, we can say impact of media. Media is also, controlled by the colonial powers, whereby they try to control media protocol in Africa, how things have to be broadcasted. They are the ones that sell cameras to the African continent. So whatever kind of device they want to use it, but indirectly on their orders. So that's also another way how neocolonialism is being manifested. Then lastly on this, we have promotion of human rights. So human rights today, the colonial powers, they also seem to enter into social life of the Africans, trying to show how they can live, but basing on the Western models. So things concerning children's rights, women's rights, a lot of things were being brought by the colonial powers as a way of controlling the social life of the African people or the African continent. So when we go to another point on manifestation of neocolonialism, promotion of human rights. So when we look at the promotion of human rights, the colonial powers still influence social life of the Africans by, making them implement various things that would let the colonial powers, monitor the social well-being of the Africans. Things concerning human rights like rights of children's rights. Can I give you an example? Right to education, right to parents, then also women's rights, things concerning gender balance of ladies, which led to women emancipation or raising the status of women. So when we go to another subtopic, indicators of neo-colonialism. We look at indicators of neo-colonialism. Here we look at an indicator. It is something which tries to signify or show the existence of something. Though the indicators can seem to be like a manifestation, but they're a bit similar and slightly different. So let us go through them, and then you see how they are. Point number one, conditional aid to influence a country. So with an indicator of neocolonialism, we have what we call conditional aid to influence a country. With the conditional aid, the colonial powers, they give you foreign aid on condition to do what they want. So they can give you money to construct roads, but they try to let you use some of their companies in construction. So again, that money they give you, you pay it back to them. That is conditional aid. Then point two, Europeans imported their forms of education to the Africans. A form of education. So they imported their forms of education or form of education on the Africans, Western education. Africans before they were using informal education, whereby young or the youth would receive education from their parents, from their uncles, from their aunties. But today, we sit in the class, teacher teaches you, and then he makes you acquire new knowledge, and also you end up getting skills from a particular lesson. Then we have what we call dependence syndrome. The colonial powers, they seem to let African countries do nothing on their own, but Africans still depending on the colonial masters in all ways. That's why they give out foreign aid. Then cultural dilution. African culture has been diluted in different ways. We use foreign languages in informal ways or public places like English, French, which have taken control of different ways of African setup. Then we can look at importation of European model of education that it provides, that doesn't provide job creators, but job seekers. Then brain drain, whereby Africans cannot deliver services to their African continent, but they go and work to other countries of the white people, where they deliver many of their capabilities and their knowledge instead of, empowering the youth on the African continent. Then dependence on European imported goods and the markets. So the African continent depends on European imported goods from Europe, and the market we try to to follow. The market is theirs. They are the ones that fix prices of goods, and then they are their goods that we buy. Without their goods, Africans cannot have goods of their own. When they try to be innovative, they try to have their homemade commodities. Europeans try to undermine them, that such commodities have not reached standard of the market. Then foreign investors that take away large tracts of land of the Africans. So the investors, they come to Africa and then they take African land. It's also an indicator of neocolonialism. Things concerning scholarships, whereby Africans, like young kids, like you learners, you end up being given scholarships to go and study from abroad. Maybe you are doing PCB, but when you get there, they give you a course which doesn't have any science subject. So they end up indoctrinating you in their own way. So those are some of the indicators of neocolonialism. Remember, when we end our lesson, we end it with a short exercise. So I want you guys to do for me these two numbers. Number one, discuss the ways how neocolonialism was manifested in African societies. Then in question two, describe the indicators of neocolonialism in Africa. So this brings us to the end of our lesson 2 on Unit 5. So thank you so much for watching. We catch up next time. Bye-bye.